with a few simple devices, you can turn your own kitchen into a home bread bakery. See how to do it, and more about French bread today on The French Chef.
The French Chef is made possible by a grant from the Polaroid Corporation.
Welcome to The French Chef. I'm Julia Child. You know, I think a lot of us always think of French bread being like the familiar long loaf like this, but exactly the same dough that makes the long loaf can do round loaves like this and big fat boules and these cute little top knot rolls. And we've already done the long loaf. So today, my emphasis is going to be on how to form the round shapes and how to bake them. But I'm going to first give you a quick demonstration on how to make the dough in case you missed the first lesson. The dough is a very simple dough. If, as you remember, and by law in France, you can only make the dough out of flour, water, yeast, and salt, because that's the law, because in France all of the bread is price controlled. So if you have 1 pound of bread, it has to be exactly the same price all over France. And this is the dough mixture here. As you see, it's very soft, and I'm going to read you off the ingredients in case you'd like to write them down. 1 package of yeast, that is either fresh cake yeast or dry active yeast, completely dissolved in 1/3 cup of warm water. 1/3 cup of warm water. And then 3½ cups, that's about 1 pound, of all-purpose flour. And if you can get unbleached all-purpose flour, that's better. And then 2¼ teaspoons of salt and 1¼ cups of tepid water, and mix them all together like this, and then turn it out onto your working surface. And this is a very damp dough, as you can see, and that's just the way it's supposed to be. And you start just by turning it over, and keep on turning it over until you can finally lift it up and slap it down, and you finally end up with this. And after it becomes looking smooth like this, you let it rest. And then you knead it a few minutes again, and it draws back on itself. And the outside is smooth, but it's still sticky. If you pick it in your fingers quickly, it doesn't stick to your fingers, but if you pinch it, it does. But that is the way the French bread dough is. It's very soft. And then after it's all ready to knead, you put it into a clean bowl and cover it with a piece of plastic, and then it is ready to rise. And the dough for French bread has to rise long and slow, and it should take a minimum of 3 hours, because it's very important that the yeast not only make the dough rise, but that it also gives it flavor and texture. And it's the long, slow rise at not over 75 degrees that is going to make the yeast act as it should. If you want to, you can cover it with a towel, but it's not necessary, and let it rise on a wooden surface, not on marble. Now here is what it looks. It has to rise to 3½ times its original amount. You had 3 cups of dough here, and it's to rise to 10½ cups. And I'm going to let you see what it looks like when you have to deflate it after its first rise. So you scoop it out of the bowl, and then you fold it over this way and that way, and then again, and then you put it into a clean bowl again. And then you let it have its second rise. And this second rise is almost as high as the first. And this again rises at around 75 degrees. And by the time it's had its second rise, it has developed a very much different, look at the difference of that texture now. It's still soft, but it isn't sticky anymore. And that's extremely important because if you don't allow it to have its long, slow rises, the second one is about 1.5 to 2.5 hours, and it goes faster than the first. If you don't let it have these rises the way it should have, it's not going to have the right texture. So no matter how carefully you do your dough, also, and it turns out perfectly, it's not going to look like real French bread unless you know how to form it properly. And we're going to form this into, this amount of dough will either do one big piece of bread or 10 to 12 little rolls. And forming the loaves is such a special technique that I went to the professional baker school in Paris and took a special lesson in it with Professor Raymond Calvel. And we filmed this part of the lesson, so let's take a look at it. Voilà.
Nous allons faire des petits pains,
We're going to make
quelques petits pains.
little breads, little rolls. Oh,
À demain.
très facile quand on sait le faire.
Très
Very
facile,
easy
voyez-vous.
when you know how to do it. I want to do this very slowly. Nous pouvons le faire très
Très
lentement.
lentement, oui. Alors vous prenez un bâton
Voilà, je vais prendre
et
le
vous
bâton.
faites comme je vais faire moi-même.
Voilà.
Vous pliez
It's turned over.
et puis vous rabattez la
And
pâte.
then push it back
C'est ça.
a little bit.
Encore une fois,
And then turn it over and push it back.
puis sur l'autre coin, ici,
On the other side,
là,
it's turned over and pushed back.
et puis le dernier côté,
The last, c'est 4 fois, 4
Oui,
times.
voilà.
about.
et puis vous renversez le
And
bâton,
you turn it. And you can see that c'est lisse.
et il faut
It's smooth,
maintenant,
smooth
oui,
now.
c'est déjà, on a déjà serré la pâte,
You've already brought it together on that side, and this is now smooth.
et puis il faut maintenant faire la boule.
Now you've got to make the ball.
Alors on imprime à la pâte un mouvement planétaire,
And then with a planetary motion, qui veut dire circular motion,
circulaire, oui.
Turn it
En,
round and
en
round.
appuyant avec le bout des doigts ici et le pouce
Pour
pour
and
faire la
take your
boule.
fingers and your thumb to make the ball.
Voilà.
You can see your finger is going around there and your thumb, which is pushing, qui pousse. And then
Ben
this,
voilà, la clé est ici.
this is called that would be the key in French, or this little pucker.
C'est ça.
And everything's gathered together, and c'est la tension sur la surface, n'est-ce pas,
C'est ça.
qui tient.
C'est ça,
It's
c'est
a
ça.
surface tension that you're...
Absolument.
Et c'est très important, toute cette
C'est très
façon de
important.
former.
C'est
Ouais.
très important.
So here's that same little boule. I thought you'd like to see it again. This was folding it up. And the object of this is to make the underside smooth. So these are these movements to make it smooth, and then you turn it over, and then with your hand, see there's your finger there, your 2 fingers, you turn it around and around under the palm of your hand, and your fingers are pushing the top down underneath so that you end up with your that little pucker, or la clé as he called it. I always pull it together with my fingers just to be sure it's going to stay. And I'll do another one. See, there's your piece of dough, and you have to very lightly flour the surface. And then under it goes under the hand. Now this is the basic form for small round rolls, and you let them rise, pucker side up, and you bake them. Or you can make fancy little rolls that are called pain de fantaisie. And Monsieur Calvel used a large ball and a small ball to make mushrooms, one of his favorite specialties.
Nous allons faire des petits champignons
You make little breads called little mushrooms.
avec 2 boules.
Well, he's making these 2 little balls.
avec lesquels on
Oh,
formera un petit chapeau
Ah, it's going to make a little
que
hat.
l'on mettra sur
oui,
le petit
non.
pain. Et on va les laisser reposer
And we're going to let them repose
quelques
and
instants.
rest.
Et ensuite, on mettra cette petite boule
Oh,
sur
they're
le
going to
petit
go in
pain.
there. Très bien. Then he takes one of these little rolls.
On les met sur...
Oh, and you just roll it out. Then you
Voici. Ensuite, on
put
le
your
fixe
finger
en
in.
enfonçant le doigt
and turn it upside
et
down.
on
Et
le
comme ça.
renverse. Voilà.
And they just rise upside down like that.
Et le chapeau se retrouve à la partie
And then you're going
supérieure.
to turn it upside down when it bakes, and the little cap will be on the top.
On va continuer
Now we're going to continue.
avec deux gros pains sous forme de boule. Il y a deux,
Oh,
encore
we're
deux.
going to have two
On va faire deux.
great big round loaves now.
On va mettre un peu de farine. Vous prenez le pâton, comme
Oui.
moi-même.
Take
Vous écrasez la pâte. Et
Mash
puis vous
it
pliez.
down. Put it
Vous
over on
égalisez
that
avec votre main
side.
droite.
And with your right
À plat, à
hand.
plat, à plat. Comme ceci.
And then you bring it over and you
Vous soulevez, vous le placez
put it up,
là,
bang it down.
dans cette position, de façon
And
à
that-
soulever cette partie-là.
So this part has to go over. And then you beat it again a little bit and turn it.
Oui. Non.
Uh,
Pardon.
Turn it
Comme
comme
ça,
ça, like
pour
that.
plier cette partie ici.
And then put that part over.
Voilà. Et ensuite, vous
And then
renversez le pâton
turn it over.
et avec vos deux mains,
And then with your
vos deux mains,
hands,
comme ceci,
like that,
faites
you turn it around.
en
Clockwise.
appuyant légèrement, vous faites rouler.
And then you just roll it around.
Pincez la pâte
You've got to
légèrement
pinch it as
et
you turn
voilà,
it.
c'est
Oui.
bien. Pincez,
Turning,
pincez toujours,
turning it around.
comme ceci.
Oui.
Voilà, c'est bien. C'est bien.
That's it.
Voilà. On met le bâton. Et vous renversez.
And that's the pucker, la clé.
Il y a la clé, il y a la clé.
These are better risen in a basket.
Paneton.
Panettone. Now here's we're going to do that big boule again. I thought you might like to see it. There's your dough, and you flatten it out. And I made a sketch so I'll remember all these movements. Take the left side and fold it over and push it back a little bit. Flatten it. And then the top comes down. Then you flatten it again. And then you pick it up like this. And then you, same side down, it's supposed to go with the thin side down. There. Flatten again. And that goes over. Then you pick it over, and the thin side goes down again. I don't know why all this banging around, but that's it. I also find that I do a little more folding over like this. And this again is to give you that bottom cushion, which is perfectly smooth, and then you have your movements of turning it around. See, there's your finger, and it presses down as you turn it around, and this puts some of the dough from the top down underneath, and this is creating your surface tension. And although you can't see you certainly can feel a coagulated gluten cloak around this, which is really like a piece of rubber. And by doing this, you're pulling it all around, and again, I find that I always have to pinch it together to make sure that everything stays. But if you can, I think you can see by just the way that it works that you have a surface tension there. And then that goes onto floured canvas. But even though he used a banneton, a round basket lined with canvas, if you formed it properly, it's going to stay in its own form like this, because you have created that surface tension by the very special way in which you did that first folding to smooth the bottom, and then the round and around movement like that. It's funny, I think you can read about this surface tension and coagulated gluten cloaks. But when you do it yourself, you somehow can feel it. I think if you know what's going on, that helps. And now the little champignon, I found that with non-French dough, there's your flattened piece and there is your little boule. If you do it the way Mr. Calvel did, the dough sticks together. So I found the thing to do is to take a piece of buttered, a little square, and cut a little collar out of it like that. And you turn this so that the smooth side is up and put the little buttered collar of foil on, and then there you are. And it rises like that and it bakes with this little collar on. And that seems to work out very well. Otherwise, and I'll show you later on when you see some of the baked ones, otherwise the little top knot sticks together, and that is not of much use. Now this is just plain floured canvas, and it doesn't have this, I don't think the banneton or the basket is necessary to put these in. And this is now to have a final rise, and it's supposed to rise to about triple. And this is the very important rise, because this is what gives you your texture. And whether to cover or not is a question. You can cover it with a towel, and then if it gets crusty, you take the towel off and cover it with plastic, and then look at it again and take the plastic off and so forth. But you don't want the top to crust over. And I want you to see how a risen one looks. This is quite well risen. As you see, it's spread out quite a bit more, but it still has retained its round shape. And the important thing is not how long it takes to rise, because it'll take between 1.5 and 2.5 hours at around 70 to 75 degrees. It's the amount of rise. It must feel puffed. And so now, after it does feel puffed and you think it's ready to go, you're now ready to bake. And an awfully important part of my lesson with Professor Calvel was how they do it in a real baker's oven. It starts out with a whoosh of steam. This is the steam that's going into the oven. And the steam is very important.
Et puis, on engage l'enfourneur à l'intérieur.
Right in. Now it's ready.
Le pain est cuit. Le pain est cuit et il est beau, voyez-vous.
Beautiful, yes.
Il est chaud.
Il est chaud.
Il est chaud.
Merci, non.
Voilà les petits pains.
Ah, les petits
champignons.
These little champignons.
Sont très jolis.
Oh, mais ça, c'est charmant. That's charming little bread.
Voici les baguettes.
These baguettes, they're long and beautiful. Oh, these are très beaux.
Elles sont belles.
So belle, beautiful, lovely. Ça craque.
Ça craque,
It's making
oui,
little
ça craque.
noises.
C'est la musique.
C'est la musique du pain.
C'est ça.
Oui, et ça
Puis,
craque.
ça craque quand on appuie dessus aussi.
Oui, voilà. Oui, c'est parfait. Voilà, il faut le mettre. Il faut toujours. You have to always stand it up so that the air will get around it.
Voilà, voilà.
Comment dire? How do we know now? Comment
maintenant,
dire que c'est cuit?
Maintenant, voyez-vous, on entend la résonance de la croûte. Le pain qui est sonore.
It's sonorous. It's everywhere.
C'est bien cuit.
Oui, c'est bien cuit. It's good. It's sonorous.
Vous entendez également ici
Bien.
Voilà, et
Je vais
maintenant,
regarder de près.
nous allons le regarder de près et examiner
We're
l'intérieur.
going to look at the interior of the bread. Oh, you're going to cut it lengthwise. Uh-huh.
Vous avez une structure type du pain français avec
This is typical French
de gros
bread.
trous,
Big
voyez-vous.
holes, great big holes,
Et vous avez également une mie qui a la teinte crème,
and it's a creamy color.
une structure de mie sauvage, irrégulière.
The holes in it, it's just a regular, well, a savagery. And it must smell good.
Mhm.
It does. It does smell good. Ça sent,
Ça sent, la,
ça sent le blé.
ça sent le blé,
smells like
la
the
noisette,
wheat.
la
It's
noisette.
sort of like a hazelnut or something. It's lovely. And when one thinks, lorsqu'on pense que ce n'est que farine, sel, eau,
Et levure.
it's only yeast, salt, flour,
Oui,
and
oui,
water,
c'est
and
très
that's all.
simple. C'est le pain de la Bible.
Professor Calvel said, le pain du Bible, the bread of the Bible, and that it really is its age-old, fundamental, natural, honest. Now, as you noticed with the baker's oven, it's very different from a home oven. And one thing that's particularly different is that they have a steam jet. You heard that whoosh of a faucet that he turned on. That was the steam going in. And the steam humidifies the oven and allows the bread to rise more before the yeast is killed, and it also sets the color. And you can approximate that steam by having a pan of water and then setting any hot object like an iron into it. See what I mean? That's just great. You can use a brick if you have a gas stove, but iron I think is best for an electric one. And now the second thing was that hot baking surface. And as you notice, when the bread went into the oven, it goes onto a hot baking shelf, which is made either out of fire brick, like this, or out of these red, or it can be made out of red tiles. These are quarry tiles. And these heat up in the oven. You can just lay them on your oven rack and let it heat up for, it takes about an hour in the oven. And the naked dough slides right in onto these red tiles. And it gives an extra push of volume to the bread. And it's very important, I think, if you want to try and approximate this. And these tiles, I find, are the best thing. They're inexpensive and you can get them anywhere. They're quarry tiles, Q-U-A-R-R-Y. Just look up in your yellow pages. And you can get quarry tiles, and they come in various sizes, and if you can't get the ones that will fit right, you can have them cut. And now, the fateful moment has arrived, for us anyway. The oven is ready, and the bread is almost ready to go into it. But the first thing is how to get the bread off of the canvas. And the thing to do is to get any kind of a board. And this happens to be a cedar shingle shaved thin, and this works very nicely. And I put some cornmeal on so it won't slip, and then you just turn it over, and once in a while your bread sticks a little bit to the canvas like this, because our canvas doesn't seem to work as well as theirs, but that hasn't hurt anything at all. And you notice that you always put it onto the board upside down, because the top of the bread will have crusted over a little tiny bit. And you want the soft, smooth underbelly to be on top so it will rise. And then you have the very important thing of the slashes. See those lovely patterns in there? That's the slashing of the gluten cloak on top of the bread. And this is really the baker's art. I find it the most difficult. I have a little razor blade like that, and I find dipping it in water helps. And then almost parallel to the dough, you make a quick slash, and you make sure that you cut at the middle of the blade so that the end of the blade doesn't make jagged marks. And the reason that you slash is to make the decorative patterns, and also to open up this cloak of gluten so that the bread will rise a little bit more when it gets into the oven. And so now this is ready to go. And our oven is absolutely ready. You'll see we have the tiles in here, and this is in the upper middle. And on the lowest shelf is a pan of water. And it's been preheated for an hour at 450 degrees. And in goes this hot weight. Well, that's great. That's a wonderful burst of steam. And here we go. And that's all there is to it, I mean, to getting the bread into the oven. And then it bakes for 5 minutes with the steam in. And then after 5 minutes, you open the oven door and take out your steam contraction, because the bread should bake the rest of the time in a dry oven. And you will notice it begins to rise up. And then for the big boule like this, you bake it for about 25 to 30 minutes until it's nice and brown, like this, and it makes its nice tap. And then you put it back into the oven and let it cook at about 350 degrees for a good other half hour, because it has to dry out from the inside. Even so, our ovens are not like Professor Calvel's. And these little champignons, they bake about 15 or 20 minutes, and then let them stay a little bit longer in the oven so that the inside will dry off. And you'll find, I think that this is something that I found more recently, in that I would always think the bread was done, and then it would, and then the crust would not be crusty. And I finally figured out that naturally it was quite different, and that the inside, which is rather damp, comes out and dampens the crust. So I want you to see. Now here's the little champignon, and you just pull this out, and there it is. And if you don't put the little collar in, it doesn't rise up. It's like that. So that's what the little collar does. And I'm going to cut open this bread so you can see how it is. Now there you are. Now we've been less than 30 minutes together, and you've really seen all the handwork that there is to making French bread. It has to have long, slow rises, but this is really French bread in half an hour. So that's all for today on The French Chef. This is Julia Child. Bon appétit!
The French Chef has been made possible by a grant from the Polaroid Corporation. Julia Child is co-author of Mastering the Art of French Cooking, Volumes 1 and 2.